Hello and welcome once again, well, not once again, for the second time, to our storytelling podcast. I am Domien.
And I'm Eline.
And what's today's topic, Eline?
Well, we're going to talk today about storytelling in video games. Because that's an entirely different kind of telling a story, right?
I would say so, yeah. I think personally that in video games you can get away with stuff that you could never do in another kind of medium, in other forms of storytelling. And also there are things that you can do in a movie or in a book that you could never do in a game. So it's a very different medium.
Right, and since especially in RPGs, they work a lot with quest lines, you have the opportunity to use more than one storyline, which is very interesting.
That is interesting, yes. I agree.
Without it becoming too complex.
Yeah, I think actually, and I think a lot of people will disagree with me here, and I may end up getting lynched by the internet mob, but I believe that video games should not have storylines that are too complex. Because, well, of course, I mean, it kind of depends on the type of game, etc. But in the end, I feel that when you're playing a game, the number one issue is that it's a game and you want to play it, and the storyline is sort of the thread that combines all the gameplay elements and it gives you a goal, etc. But it has to be fairly simple so you can focus as a player.
I agree, since lots of video games with which try to be very original and have these complex stories, often it's the gameplay that suffers from it, and that's just a pity.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a great story doesn't have to be a complex story. I'm all in favor of good stories, of stories that are appealing, that are exciting, that with characters that you get to know and love, and I'm all for that, of course. But what we don't need, I think, is complex forms of storytelling where you have flashbacks and flash forwards and visiting different characters in different situations at different times, I think that's not really something that works in a game. And I'm really going to get lynched for this one, but I feel that The Witcher 3 really suffered from this. And I know that the game was praised a lot for its storyline, but I thought that was actually a big problem in the game. It starts with a flashback, and then the next 10 minutes are a dream, and then suddenly you're back in reality. But
Inception.
And then suddenly you play as a different character, and you find out things as a player that the main character Geralt doesn't know, and I think the whole thing, storytelling wise, it becomes just a huge mess, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's often because the creators want to be original and they want to be new and inventive, and I understand that, but I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
Didn't end well, did it? Your dream?
No. A wild hunt appeared, attacked Ciri. I couldn't move, stood there like a stump.
I really liked, for me, my favorite story that I've ever played in a video game was Knights of the Old Republic. And that's a great story, and it's got a twist somewhere around 3/4 of the game. It's got a great villain, great characters, it's got everything you want in a story, but it's structured in such a way that you never have to deal with too much information at once as a player.
A good story doesn't take a lot of complexity. Look at Stephen King, who often starts his stories with a simple what-if question. It's like Kingdoms of Amalur, which was an interesting game because everyone's destiny is fixed. But you, as the main character, you have the destiny that can be changed. And that's a very simple element, but the start of a very interesting story. And
in a way, not to be too postmodern about this, but I thought that was actually a nice little meta element, because what you just described, that situation, that's what all games are like in the end. You know, everybody's fate is sort of more or less sealed in video games. Everybody's an NPC.
Right.
But you, as the player, are the only one who can change things. You are the only real agent in the world. And I think the creators of Kingdoms of Amalur sort of ran with that idea and turned it into a setting. And that was really original. I liked that a lot.
I know I've been severely warned by Domien not to turn this into a Bethesda merchandise, but I really love the simple story of Skyrim, where you're just the Dragonborn and the only one with the power of dragons who is also a match for these dragons.
Yeah, I agree. It's a straightforward story in Skyrim. You're the Dragonborn. Only you can defeat the dragons. But, you know, over the course of a number of sub-quests, they do add an element of mystery to it. You have to discover things, you have to grow. It is nicely built up step by step. But in my opinion, the big strength of Skyrim and of Bethesda's style of open world storytelling is that the main quest is fairly simple and can be finished in a relatively short amount of time compared to what the game has to offer. But that allows you to spend 100 hours doing something else and then pick up the main quest again, and you kind of know where you are, and you don't have to think really hard. Oh wait, what did I have to do again in the main quest? What was that about again? You're right back in. And other games that have tried open world storytelling, like Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, the third Dragon Age, in my opinion, suffers a bit from the fact that they want to tell this huge story and it's spread out over dozens and dozens of hours of gameplay, and in between you do all these tiny little side quests that are actually not really important, and as a result it becomes stretched, sort of thin, like butter scraped over too much bread.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, what I think is really great about Bethesda storytelling, and I'm also talking about Fallout 4 here, which also has a very simple storyline, is in an open world game, you can have these tiny little quest lines, and you may have a much simpler story that is not original enough in lots of people's opinion, but you can have multiple storylines. And it can go very far. They even tell stories just by their settings. For example, when you get into the den of a Reekling and you see just the mess they make, it tells you something about these creatures. Maybe you should tell the
listeners what a Reekling is.
It's this tiny little cute creature. It's one of the enemies in Skyrim, but there's a quest line where you can become friends with them as well.
You strong. I'll try to keep stronger with you. Not maybe you too strong. Want to be chief.
But when you enter their caves, they're really messy. And that's kind of cute because you learn about the way they live and the way they are just by the way they arrange the settings. And there's also this book, The Lusty Argonian Maid, in Skyrim. And for some reason, these Reeklings, they have a very big pile of them everywhere in their caves. So they're very big fans.
Dirty little guys.
Yeah, dirty little guys. So that's what I love about it. Just
the dirty little guys.
Entering a room in Fallout tells you an entire story just by the little notes you find.
Very often, yeah.
It's just storytelling within storytelling within storytelling.
I've heard that
awesome.
The Dark Souls series does that as well.
Yeah.
You get. I've heard that what's really cool about Dark Souls is that when you play the game, there isn't much storytelling directly, but when you just exploring the world and finding books and looking at places, you start to sort of puzzle together what happened in this world, and it becomes this really, really big epic lore, but it's very sort of subtle,
and it creates a kind of mystery.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of adventure games do this too, very well. That's what I loved about the Myst series as well. It was this mysterious world, and every time you found out about a new location, you learn more about the situation you were in and the world you were in. That's kind of a way of storytelling that you cannot do in a novel or an audio drama. You can only do that in games, making the protagonist, the gamer, actually explore and find things out on its own.
Yeah, exactly. You know, those are some of the key issues, of sort of the key goals of storytelling in games. Because of the very nature of games, there are certain things that are sort of sidelined.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of realism. You know, for example, in video game, take Elder Scrolls again, for example. The sort of magic that you have at your disposal as a player, if there really was a world where that existed, where anyone with a bit of magical ability could cast fireballs, etc., the world would look very different, I think, very quickly. Because what would be the effects of that, you know? And I think a novelist will start thinking about that. If every third person or so can cast fireballs, then why would they actually even need to chop wood anymore, for example? But in Skyrim, you see people chopping wood all over the place.
Yeah.
Why? Because, you know, that's just part of the sort of the vibe, the feel, the sort of world they want to evoke. But it's not realistic because it wouldn't be like that.
Of course.
But that doesn't matter.
And you need limits to a magic system. It's in a game you need to limit your magic system as well, but it's a bit different. I think you get away with a lot more things than in a novel.
Yeah, definitely. Even, for example, just how long it takes to travel from one place to another.
Yeah.
You know, in games, the world is usually actually very small. If the real world were that small,
right? And gamers often they understand because you know they understand that you need to alter a couple of things in order for the gameplay to benefit from it. And that's why you have fast traveling in lots of games. If you wouldn't have that, well, you can always choose not to use it, right?
Yeah, most games you have a fast travel system, including MMOs. I remember when I first started playing Lord of the Rings online, you had to wait quite a long time before you could get your own horse. And it felt like a real burden not having a horse. Because that meant, you know, you sometimes had to spend 10 minutes just walking from one place to the next. Now they've changed that and you get a horse pretty quickly, and I can see why. Anyway, so yeah, what else do we want to cover in this?
Well, for example, what I love about my favorite games, and I won't call them by name, but what my favorite games all have in common is that they don't have banal quest lines within the main story. So they might have banal quest lines, but not within the main quest. Right. So if you're in a mood where you just want to discover and you know find someone's pet, then you can do this. But it doesn't turn up in the main quest line. It's not like you're becoming, for example, you're becoming the Dragonborn, and someone asks you, I can give you information about how to kill dragons, or where to find a map so you can find them. But I've lost my goat yesterday, and I want you to look for it.
Here, goat. Here, princess.
Yes.
And when you've returned
or my frying pan.
Yeah.
Would you help me, dearie? Bring an old widower a pan. I could never break down that door myself.
And when you've returned my goat or frying pan or whatever, I will tell you this very, very important information that might save the world. There are games that get away with that, and I simply don't understand.
No, I get what you mean. That doesn't really bother me so much, because sometimes small things do lead to
Right, but when the
bigger
stakes are
things.
high, you must be a real if you really want people to find your pet in order to give them vital information to save the world or to save their spouse or
well,
whatever.
that's another thing that you always get in video games, in video RPGs especially, is that everyone is incredibly passive, and you, the main character, is the only person in the entire world who ever does anything, and everybody else is always whining, oh, my wife is kidnapped, oh, my village is under attack, come help us, but we won't do anything ourselves.
Yeah, right.
We'll just stand in this exact same spot day and night.
Yeah.
That's, you can get away with that in a game. If you did that in a book, people would just say, why aren't these people doing anything themselves? They are so weak, and
Well, it helps if those characters who have vital quests for you can become companions for a limited time. That helps, I think.
Yeah, that's
Because
one way.
it would make sense if someone has lost his daughter, for example, and they want you to help look for her. I would want to go along, and I wouldn't just stay home and wait for the other guy to return with information about her.
Yeah, no, that's true. But these are typical trappings of video games. I think recently games have been trying to solve this problem by making the stakes more personal. So, for example, both in The Witcher 3 and in Fallout 4, the person who is missing and that you're looking for is someone close to yourself, your own child or your own protege. And so that sort of gives a more internal motivation to the main character.
Right, yeah.
But for me, actually, both games kind of suffered because of that. Because in the case of Fallout, the fact that you're looking for your son, for me, that makes it hard to justify doing anything else until you find him.
If you have a lot of imagination, you can justify pretty much anything.
Yeah, but to me, that was sort of, that's where the freedom that you get in the Bethesda game was sort of a little bit hurt in Fallout 4 because of that.
Like, I did the Minuteman quest first, and my motivation was I want to have a lot of allies before I start looking for my son, because it's no good to both of us if I turn up dead.
Yeah,
So, and it's a very hostile world, so you need allies, and you need to give first, and in order to return, people need your trust. So I started building communities and gaining people's trust, and it's very effective if you're in a very hostile area. There are all these Minutemen there to help you out if you're in peril.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. Here's a strange thing. To me, I find it more fun in a game if I can be a little bit detached from the story. Does that make sense?
If it's more open, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Like, that's a benefit that Skyrim has compared to Fallout 4, because the sky is the limit. You can roleplay pretty much any character, and while I would probably only create 2 characters for Fallout 4, I would create, I have created about 10 or more.
Yeah.
Because you can invent all these kind of different backgrounds and stories for just one storyline, one character.
I noticed that in older games, the main character is more often someone with no real connection to the environment they're in, with no family members or close friendships at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because, that allows for more role-playing freedom. And I mean, in recent times, developers have been trying to make games a bit more emotional, a bit more, hit you emotionally. Because of that, they've introduced close family relations. And for books and movies, I completely agree, of course. But I'm starting to think now that actually I prefer it when that's not the case. I liked it when Dragon Age 2 came out. The game was heavily criticized for a number of reasons. But one of the things that I liked about it at first was that you had a sister and a mother, and you sort of had to take care of them, and they were a big important part of your story. And I liked that. But then afterwards, in Fallout and The Witcher, etc., they kept coming back to having these close family relationships. As a result, the sort of adventure feel, the more escapist side of a game, was kind of lost. So I liked it for one time, but I don't want too much of that, because
if you really want to immerse into that world, it doesn't make sense that you would just leave your family behind and go explore.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are a loner and a sort of lone ranger type, that actually works. It works better that way.
That makes sense, right? The same goes for I think if you have to have relationships, I think it comes naturally. For example, you meet a companion and you roleplay that you start liking that companion, and when you lose it, when he or she dies, you actually think that's terrible.
Yeah.
So when you roleplay, when you get immersed into a world, you start feeling for characters anyway, whether they're introduced in the beginning or whether you meet them along the way. It just comes naturally.
What's your take on romance in video games?
Maybe I'm not allowed to say it, but I think it's brilliantly done in Bethesda games.
Oh yeah.
Because you're free to have a relationship. You can decide to get married and just settle and have a house.
There's nothing romantic about getting married in Skyrim. Come on.
No, that's true. That's true. But
it's not even remotely romantic.
The cool thing about those games is that if you have a lot of imagination yourself, they're perfect for you. But if you like clear cut-out storylines, just right there for you to take, then you're probably better off with a different game. But I like to invent things myself and imagine things myself, and I imagine a more romantic wedding than they actually present, because it's really dry.
It is very dry.
It's just husband turns up, ceremony, husband goes home.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Do you agree to be bound together in love, now and forever?
I do. Now and forever.
Do you agree to be bound together in love, now and forever? I present the two of you with these matching rings.
We're married.
Blessed by
I guess
Mara's
we'll need to decide where we're
grace.
living, won't we?
May they protect
You
each
can
of
always
you
stay
in
with
your new
me.
life together.
Not really romantic.
But BioWare has always been sort of the main developer for people who like to have romances in games.
And it's kind of cute that you can have that you can build a relationship with your companions along the way. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, personally, I used to like it, but I don't know. These days, I really don't care for it anymore.
It's just
It was a big deal for me when I played Mass Effect. Like, oh, who's going to be my romantic interest? But now
that you're married, it's different.
I'm not allowed to. No, really, actually, I guess all of that is part of something that I've come to realize over time, which is that if you want to tell an emotional story that is human emotion, video games are, and a lot of people are going to hate me for this, video games are the worst possible medium to do that.
Yeah, they're probably
and they
not the
keep
best
trying to. I get the impression that they keep trying to justify video games by saying, oh, but they can tell all these emotional stories, like, haven't you played The Last of Us or whatever? And I think, in every single case, it would have been more emotional if it were a movie.
Right.
Or,
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think it's kind of cute if they put these small elements in there. For example, in Dragon Age, I thought it was really nice that you could give your party members gifts and then see what the reaction was. That was kind of cute, but you know, the sex thing, I don't really need it in games.
It's very awkward.
Yeah, it's awkward, and
I think the thing is, what you just mentioned about the gift giving and characters liking what you do, etc. Those, to me, those are the real emotional things that the video game can do, that a movie or a book cannot do.
Right.
Is giving you the sense of connecting, interacting. Yeah. But I think that only works if you do it on a very sort of not so serious scale.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the big emotional moments. Who's going to live? Who's going to die? I don't really enjoy that. But just small things like, oh, they enjoyed the present I gave. I like that. But that's just me, I guess.
No, I agree. I think the best game creators are those who just say, we want to create a game that's simple and that doesn't want to. I think it goes for movies as well. That doesn't really want to start from a message or a.
Oh no! No, certainly a game should not have a message.
Even having trouble with the moral choices, the increasing moral choices in video games, I think it kind of takes away my gameplay pleasure, actually.
I agree. I think that moral choices have become too much the sort of scene from The Dark Knight with the two boats, you know, where
Which
really
was a cool scene.
Yeah, but I mean the really difficult moral choice. What am I going to do? I don't think that's what games should be about. I know everybody these days is saying that's what makes a great game. Oh, these difficult moral choices. But I completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
That's not morality. That's sort of fringe morality. You know?
I'm even having trouble with these very vital choices you have to make in a game that have these terrible consequences. I usually don't look for walkthroughs online, but when I come across this very vital choice and I have really no idea about the outcome, then I have to know what the consequences of my choice will be, or it will just destroy the entire game for me.
Well, here's an example of something that I really did like. There is lesser known role-playing game series based on the German tabletop game The Dark Eye, Das Schwarze Auge, and the series is called Drakensang. And in the second game, The River of Time, I think what they did very well in that game was you do get to make various choices along the way that completely change what happens in the game. But they are not moral choices. They're simply a matter of what kind of adventure do you prefer? A sneaky one or an all-out war adventure? And I like that.
Right.
That gives it replayability. You can play it in a different way, and it's not about, you know, what's right, what's wrong, who gets to live, who gets to die.
True.
Actually, it makes it more fun to replay.
And that's where a game can make a difference. Games can do lots of stuff that movies and books cannot do. I think the best video game creators know the limitations of games and know the assets of games, the possibilities.
Yes.
For example, you can play with life and death. What happens when you die in the game? I know this. Was it Dragon's Dogma, where you didn't die but only got scars or something?
Oh yeah, that Fable, I think.
Oh, Fable, okay.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. If you died, quote unquote, in that game, you didn't actually die. You couldn't die, but you did get a battle scar, and and the more often you died, the uglier you got.
Yeah.
And also in that game, the more often you ate, the fatter you became.
Really?
And after a while, my character became this huge, fat guy full of scars. So yeah.
And there you were trying to make a very beautiful character at the beginning, and then you just screwed him up.
I thought it was actually interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there are lots of games who are starting to explore that, the possibilities of gameplay, like Divinity is also very original.
A Belgian RPG series, and a very good one.
Yeah, and in simply the things they come up with, and the setting, and the silly little references to high and low culture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a certain sense of humor that I thought died out in games after Monkey Island and Space Quest, for people who are old enough to remember those. The sort of humor that really remembers it's all just a game, you know?
Yeah.
Let's just have fun. Let's not take it too seriously. But Larian Studios with Divinity, they brought that back to RPGs, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. I love that. Because I think a lot of more recent games suffer from the fact that they take themselves too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably what I like about the Fallout setting as well. It's
got
very,
a lot of humor also.
Yeah, and very tongue-in-cheeky and a bit dark humor as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You have these silly little instruction videos.
Following total atomic annihilation, the rebuilding of this great nation of ours may fall to you. That's why we at Vault-Tec have prepared these educational materials for you to better understand the 7 defining attributes that make you special. Our topic today is endurance.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I always appreciate humor in games.
Definitely, yeah. I'd like to mention one more game, Alan Wake. What did you think of that?
I loved it. The atmosphere was awesome. I just thought it was too difficult, and really zombies are not really good for my health.
But it was a survival game, so you had to have that feel of, I've only got one more bullet, and
I'm not good with zombies, and at some point I ran out of ammo, and I just got stuck in the game, and that was really sad, because I really wanted to finish it, but I sucked. I just didn't. I'm not good with zombies. I'm not very good with ghouls as well. They're really, really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I played Fallout, then I always appreciate you being around.
Maybe one more question. Or topic that I'd like to discuss. We've been talking a lot about role-playing games because both of us like to play those the most. But I'm wondering about different genres of games. Like, what about strategy games or even match 3 games? How do you get storytelling in those sort of things? And
well, I remember a tablet game, a match 3 game.
Mm-hmm.
What was its name again?
Was it Match 3 Quest?
Yeah, it was Match 3 Quest. It was something with Quest. I remember that. And that's kind of a hybrid between roleplay and Match 3, which is a brilliant concept, actually, if you come to
me, that sounds like pizza with chocolate sauce, but okay.
I thought it was original. And, of course, you never get as much fun out of a tablet or a smartphone game that you get out of a real video game just with your console or computer. There are a lot of original things out there, I think. And I do think that adventure games are a genre that's really interesting to play on a tablet.
Right.
Especially if it's a big one.
Yeah. What do you mean a big one?
A big tablet.
Oh, okay. I thought a big adventure
screen.
game.
Big screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. Japanese role-playing games, on the whole, I've noticed, tend to not give you a choice in the storytelling. And they tell you the story. And the roleplay aspect purely comes from the type of gameplay. You know, you can build your character and you can, but the story is just told to you in cutscenes.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's okay, but I'm not a big fan of cutscenes because I think
Me
you know
neither.
you can watch a movie if you want cutscenes. You want to play if you play a game, but these Japanese games, like the first RPG I ever played was Dragon Quest IX, Sentinels of the Starry Skies, and I thought it was pretty cool because the gameplay was a lot of fun. And it didn't bother me that much that the story was just straight out told to you because I was having so much fun discovering all these kinds of abilities and putting my party together and stuff and having these really funny names and equipment and it was a really
that was also a game
setting.
with a sense of humor.
Yeah, really original setting. I love that. But when they start getting more serious, I'm not really a big fan of the Japanese games.
Okay, fair enough.
I like them silly and pixelated.
Okay, so I guess that's a good note to end our discussion of video games on. Silly and pixelated.
Yeah, and of course we're really, really interested in what your opinion is about storytelling in games. What do you like about stories in games? What do you dislike? I think a lot of games have their strengths. But yeah, there are just some games, they have all the things that you're looking for in a game. And I think it's personal. I'm a Bethesda girl.
You were? Really?
Yeah, and I know lots of people are like, what? I've played Skyrim for like 2 hours and I really don't understand what you like about it. Well, that's fine. Then you're probably not a Bethesda.
No, it isn't. Those people are just wrong. I'm kidding.
It's like someone ever told me, oh, The Lord of the Rings, yeah, I've seen those movies.
No, those people are wrong.
I didn't really get them. What was the big deal about it?
Those people are objectively wrong.
Okay.
If you don't like The Lord of the Rings, see a doctor, a psychiatrist. Or you know what, just lock yourself up in a padded cell somewhere.
With the extended edition.
Yes, of course. Okay, so I think we've covered enough ground.
Yeah.